I'm Egbert, the owner of this station. Check out my website at egbert.com. That's EGGBURT, egbert.com. Now it's back to Brad and John. Check out their website at bjshow.co. The BJ Show? Come on, guys. Anyway, here's B and J.
It is Brad and John, and you can check out our podcast at bjshow.co. We also put everything up on our YouTube channel, which is bjshow.video. It'll take you right to our YouTube channel. And John's gloating about the fact that our YouTube channel grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, doesn't it?
Well, I don't talk about it on the air. I can't stand when content creators come on the air and say, look at all our subscribers, look at all of our views. I think that that's tacky. I think nobody cares. I think that's insider stuff. But Brad, it is a good opportunity to thank the folks who share the show with their friends, and we always appreciate it.
John, can I tell you something?
Absolutely.
Look at all our subscribers. Look at all our views.
One of my favorite things to do when I hear, and I've done this with somebody who's, well, why don't you say their name? No, I'm not going to say their name, Brad. But somebody who's a really good content creator locally, I subscribed to them for a long time, and then they started talking about how explosive their subscribers were, so I unsubscribed. Because if you have that many subscribers and you have to brag about it, you clearly don't need my subscription.
Don't need John. Okay. The elephant in the room is what John and I did not refer to last segment. This is the second segment. If you are listening to a podcast out of order or on the YouTube channel, this morning is 9/11, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But this morning is the day after the debate. Now, John, did you watch the debates?
No, I didn't watch any of it.
I watched like the first half an hour of it, and to be honest with you, it bothered me. And
Ooh, why is that?
I don't know. I guess I'm getting to the point where there's so many issues we have in our country, and I just think that so many of them are just being ignored. And I go back to the quote that we use as a on-air little promo on this very station, where it's Gary Vee, comparing the United States to the later days of the Roman Empire, when the Roman Empire is starting to fall apart. And here the Roman Empire was this incredible governmental, societal, point in history, which did all these great things, but then it started to fall apart. And I think that's where we're at. And I think what they were talking about, to me, was not any part of the whole, what the whole issue is with the country. It bothered me. Now, having said that, I think that this is just me, and I'm not, a flag-waving person as far as Kamala's concerned. I'm not going to do a Taylor Swift and after the debate come out and say, well, I'm voting for Kamala. I think she won the debate, and I don't think Trump did a very good job. I'll be honest with you. And see, here's the other thing. She had everything to gain, because it comes back to my old saying of under promise, over deliver. Okay, everyone made fun of her, all the crazy stuff she said. She goes into the word salad, things like that. That was a different Kamala last night. She didn't do any word salad stuff. She didn't, do the circular stuff where she says, well, the reason behind this is behind reasons, and there's reasons behind this, and that's because reasons are behind things. You know what I mean? She didn't go into one of those crazy things.
Yeah,
oh, what did you just say? But the one thing that I think that was a little off-putting for her, when they did the two frame where she's talking and they got Trump in the, she's in the right box and he's in the left box, which is interesting because of the fact that that's the exact opposite of where they are. But she was like doing the scoffing at him, and she would sort of flip her hair and, be like, well.
Yeah, like real sassy.
Yeah, I don't know. Isn't that the definition of being like a brat girl? Isn't that what like a brat girl is? Right?
I think so, but
right.
I think it's very brat of her.
Right.
I just don't know why anybody. I'm just in the camp where I think people have their mind made up, and you watch a debate for confirmation bias. Because you want to point out, if you're a Trump supporter, you want to point out what a bad little brat Kamala is, and not in a good way.
Okay.
And if you're a Kamala supporter, you say, "Oh, look at that oaf, that orange Cheeto," which is redundant. Look at that Cheeto, Donald Trump. What a jerk! Like an undecided voter in Ohio is not going to be like, I'm going to invest 90 minutes at least and watch a presidential debate.
Well, there's one interesting part of the debate, and if I can say something, I did listen to a couple different experts. I got tired of it, left, decided I didn't watch it anymore, and then I did, watch some of the recaps. And one of the guys, I can't remember what channel I was watching, he was talking about the fact that Trump made a huge error when he talked about the immigrants. And what he should have done was he should have read the names of women who have been murdered and raped by illegal immigrants. But instead,
that's a great point, Brad.
Well, but here's the interesting point. This expert, and we'll use air quotes for expert, said that instead he talked about the Springfield, Ohio situation where allegedly the immigrants are eating cats and eating dogs, okay?
Yeah.
And he talked about how that was a terrible mistake, that Trump missed a point. I will disagree with him. And you know why I'll disagree with that expert?
Because talking about eating cats and dogs is more exciting.
Talking about eating cats and dogs has more resonance with the majority of the American public, because if you say that a baby was found murdered on the street, people go, oh my God, that's terrible. But if you say someone chopped off the head of a dog and ate the dog, people go, oh my God, that's terrible.
I know. Now, Brad, it's been nearly a month since you told the story about a dog that was assaulted and the number of protesters. You want to tell that story?
No, because you make fun of me when I tell the stories all the time.
No, I don't. It's been a while.
It goes back to the point where, and you probably remember this, and once again, I am not saying that it's okay to, I'm not a hunter, okay? Have I killed animals in my life? Well, I've killed probably 15 of them with cars and trucks that I've hit, me driving. I ended up in the hospital twice over hitting deer. So, yes, I've killed animals. Have I shot animals? I've shot small animals. I've shot varmints. When I was a kid, we had a problem in our house with moles and things like that, and my dad had an air rifle, and I shot, the first thing I ever killed a long time ago, okay? And once again, if you're a hunter, I say more power to you. I'm not going to be one of these people. It's terrible. I'm not going to be like what's the quote, the famous quote? I think it's Elizabeth Warren, when she says, if you shoot a deer with an assault rifle, you can cook them at the same time, which shows
it's ridiculous
how little she knows about ammunition and rifles and things like that. But what happened was, this guy, something happened with his dog. He got mad at his dog, and he went out in the front yard or the backyard of his house, someplace down in South City or South County, and he beat the dog to death. Okay, once again, horrible situation. I get it. I totally understand. But yet, you read these stories all the time about these these left subhuman men, and it's always men, that beat little babies to death. They shake them to death or they drown them or stuff like that. Okay, nobody shows up at their house to protest. But this guy that beat his dog to death for like weeks, protesters would show up at his house with signs. Throw this guy in jail. He deserves to be in jail. Okay, once again, there's this thing called, what is it, Maslow's theory of hierarchy? Isn't that what it is? As far as okay, that's a psychological thing. But once again, there's a hierarchy of life, okay? And thankfully, we're on top of that. We're on the top of that hierarchy. Human beings are the top layer, okay? And then below that, there are other living creatures that don't deserve the same, attention and whatever you want to call it, importance to life or death. And do I condone the fact that this guy beat his dog to death with a hammer? No, I think it was horrible. But yet, where are those people when a human being, a little baby, gets mauled, or sometimes you hear these crazy stories about they've been murdered by throwing into like a hot bath and they died of that. I mean, where are the people standing in front of that guy's house? Where are the people with the protest signs? Where are the people saying that guy should be thrown in jail for the rest of his life and the key should be thrown away? Because to me, once again, it's one thing when you kill someone who has a way to defend themselves. But a little baby, it's defenseless. You know what I'm saying? There's no excuse for that. But yet, to me, we've gotten so much into this, oh, pets. I mean, look at the statistics. You look at the money that's spent on pets. And once again, I'm going to get pushback. I have friends of mine that have cats. I have friends of mine that have dogs. And, to them, the world revolves around that dog. You know what? And to a certain extent, I sort of feel sorry for them because of the fact that to me that shows that they don't value human interaction as much as they do interaction with a pet. That's just me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. I get it. First of all, I think it's great to hear you finally come out in favor of Amendment 3.
Well, John,
because you're saying right now that a human life is not just a fetus, and you're right when you talk about babies that are murdered, Brad. And I know that when you say that, you mean extend it to babies that are vacuumed out, babies that are killed, babies that might happen to be inconvenient, and so they're just snuffed out. So it's good to hear you talk about Amendment 3.
That came up in the debate last night, and Trump brought up the fact that, and I don't know if you remember this, originally he said he misidentified the governor. He identified the governor of West Virginia, and it was actually the governor of Virginia. Have you ever heard that quote from that governor? I think he was interviewed on a radio show. Well, he essentially said, and once again, this guy, he's not the governor anymore. This guy is an MD. He's a doctor. And essentially, he said, I see if I can find the quote somewhere. To me, first time I heard it, I said to myself, that's got to be
Okay, what is it?
He essentially says, the scenario he was giving was a baby's born in the delivery room. And at that point in time, the parents can decide if the baby should live or not. Okay? The baby,
yeah, I heard about this. You're right. Like abortions after birth.
The baby has been born. It's now, I don't care what you say about abortion, and once again, that's a slippery slope. We could talk about that for the next 4.5 hours and not get anywhere because the people who are against abortion are going to stay against it. The people who are going to, want it are going to, it's just, it's sort of like in the old days, you remember this, you always kid about this.
Yep.
Jim White would come on the air at night and he would give the topics he's not going to talk about. And back in the day, it was always bussing, because of the fact that nobody's ever going to, nobody's ever come on the air and said like, well, I was against bussing until I heard two callers before me, and he totally changed my mind. It's never going to happen. Okay. So the governor of Virginia did say that. And Kamala said, no, that never happened. That never happened. It did happen. And, where do you draw the line? I mean, where do you draw? And that's what's so the slippery slope of the whole abortion thing. Is it, it's even to the point where, was it you that mentioned something about the fact that recently somebody was killed and the baby didn't make it, and you made some comment about even the Post-Dispatch essentially said it was a baby or something. What was it?
You're right. No, it was Kathy Conway passed away, and they talked about the fact that she has a grandson on the way that hasn't been born yet.
Exactly.
And even the Post-Dispatch is acknowledging that that's a human life. That's a baby, even though it's still in the womb.
Exactly. So in other words, the liberal Post-Dispatch, which is pro-abortion, essentially, by saying, sort of like, oh, she's got a grandkid on the way, and she died before the grandkid, was officially born. You essentially, the Post-Dispatch was saying that is a person in that lady's tummy, right? So to speak.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody's ever going to win on that. I mean, and once again, to me, I'm a libertarian guy. I'm the guy, and see, this is the point that Trump made last night. The whole deal about the Roe versus Wade, and this is where it backfired for the Republicans, okay? Because the Republicans, we need to get rid of Roe versus Wade. And when they finally get rid of it, then it's like, okay, now what do we do? It's like somebody who campaigns for something, and they campaign for like 10 years, and all of a sudden one day they say, okay, fine, we agree with you. And then they go, okay, well, that was my life for 10 years. What am I going to do now? The whole point that Trump made was they threw it back to the states. Now, Missouri is going to be an interesting state because, in less than 2 months from today, because election is November 5th, so today's the 11th, 2 months from today, it's going to be decided. I say it's going to be thrown out where they're going to blow the thing wide open again. And once again, the people have spoken, and what are you going to do? Say the people haven't spoken? Are you going to say that the Republicans did not represent the majority of Missourians? Once again, and if it becomes a Missouri constitutional amendment, you can't touch it. You can't F with it, as far as the Republicans are concerned. And they can jump up and down and yell and scream, well, this is terrible. Once again, the people have spoken. And my point being, you know what? I think that the government says too much things about everybody. My complaint, I've said this before, and I've said this to people, and I've said this to women before, and a couple of women looked at me like I had three heads, which I think maybe I did at the time. But the point being is, it's all about the woman. Well, guess what? The woman got pregnant because of a dude. Okay, so if that baby goes full term and it's born, that woman can go after that guy for child support. But yet the dude has no say-so in if he gets a woman pregnant. He has no say-so if the woman says, I'm going to get an abortion. He can't say, well, no, you're not. I'm going to say you can't do that. I'm going to file suit against you. No court's going to touch that because of the fact they're going to say, you don't have anything to say, dude. It's her body, right? Isn't that the way it works?
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, I think we glossed over the fact, Brad, that the top headline on Tony'sKansasCity.com today is Taylor Swift's shocking endorsement of Kamala Harris.
Boy, talked about that. I mentioned.
I'm joking, Brad. I said we glossed over it, like you mentioned it once, and we didn't dive into that. Can you believe? I really thought that she was going to come out for Donald Trump.
John, once again, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Our new presidents, we're into this mode. First. I heard. On NPR of all places, of course you'd hear something like this. On NPR, I heard a NASA spokesperson say that one of the important aspects of them to going back to the moon. Remember, we've been to the moon. We were at the moon, 50 years ago? Now we're going back, right? Okay, and this is the NASA spokesperson. One of the most important aspects of NASA going back to the moon is so we can get our first woman on the moon and our first person of color on the moon. And I'm going like, okay, here we go again.
That's nice.
It's like, are we for the next? I'll be dead and gone. Would there still be? Well, we first. It's like we have KJP, our first black / lesbian press secretary. We have it's to the point where once again, when the Cardinals, which they're in the situation right now, they're not doing well. Mo doesn't say, well, you know what? We need to find our first Latino indigenous, transgender pitcher because that's what we really need. We need a Latino and indigenous transgender pitcher, and we're going to win the games. No. He's going to find the best damn pitcher they can to win ball games. No matter if the guy is gay, straight, whatever he is, he's going to go out there and find the best person. It's called meritocracy. And you know what? If the best person is a white dude, so be it. If the best person is a black woman who, and once again, it came up last night with the thing with Kamala, they said, well, Trump, you said she was black. You remember this crazy thing about it is, and I do remember, it's amazing how these historical things get sort of pushed under the rug. She never talked about her father, who was the black part of her. She always talks about her mother. And even on this show, I said one morning, well, her mother and father are both dead. No, her mom's dead. Her dad's still very much alive. And her dad, the only comment that her dad made about Kamala recently?
No, I don't.
He chastised her because of the fact that one point in time someone said to her about, hey, I think they said she gave this veiled answer about if she smoked marijuana, and she said something, well, my father's Jamaican.
Yeah, you talked about this a couple weeks ago. He was not happy about that.
Right, he was not happy about it. Essentially saying you're essentially perpetuating the stereotype that Jamaicans all we do is sit around and smoke weed all the time.
Yeah, where would people get that idea? Where would anybody who's ever been to Jamaica get that idea?
Well, nowadays all you have to do is walk down the street in downtown St. Louis, or go to a Cardinals game, or go to a kids baseball game, or pick your kids up at the Francis House School District. Pickup line, and oh man, life's good.
You just get a contact high.
Right.
The simple solution, let's go back to NASA real quick. The simple solution is, for the right price, couldn't you just say Neil Armstrong was a woman?
Well, see,
then he could be, at the time, he was the first man on the moon. And then now you could say if he actually transitioned, you could celebrate him as both, couldn't you?
But see, you bring up an interesting point because of the fact that you can change history that way by, George W. Bush could come out and say, you know what? A lot of people don't realize it, but my great-great-grandfather was black, so I was the black president. I beat Barack Obama, and a lot of people don't know it, but I'm really a woman. And when I was 11 years old, I had reassignment surgery, and I became a man, but I'm really a woman. And people go, whoa, my God, we did have our first black president. We've had our first transgender president, right? Rewrite history.
And I think that's what happens, too, if you look back at a lot of – you're starting to see in historical texts about the first publicly gay whatever. Because there have been gay guys in the Missouri legislature as long as you've had, tea houses.
But
whatever the hell they're called.
See, my point is, I don't care. If they do the job, I don't care. I really don't. And to the point where I think, and I've told the story before, I have a friend of mine who's been gay for quite some time, and he talks about the fact that he's upset when they started tacking letters onto the LGBT. Essentially, in his eyes, lesbian, gay, and bisexual. That's it. That's the line right there. That describes, 99%, or that describes whatever. Let's say that portion of the population is 20% of the general population. That describes 19.9% of the general population that is into that lifestyle, okay? Whatever you want to call it, sexual preference, the whole bit. It's done, okay? We're done with it. But when you start tacking on the plus, and even to the point where...
Asterisk, yeah.
Well, even to the point where I said I described someone that I know as the A in LGBTQIA++. And the person I said this to said to me, what is that?
Asexual, right?
I go, it depends on who you ask, because I've seen it described 3 or 4 ways, I've seen the same thing with I, the LGBTQIA. What does I stand for? Well, it depends on who you ask.
Intersex, right?
Well, and then the Q. The Q could be, I've seen that described as, well, it could be queer. That could be questioning. I'm going like, okay.
I didn't know that it could be questioning.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that childhood game you'd play called Smear the Questionable? I love that game. The guy gets the ball, you just tackle him, smear the questionable.
And you know what? I think the school system went downhill when they outlawed dodgeball, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, we have to take a break.
Covered a lot of ground this break, Brad.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?